Welcome to Scale Without Chaos, the podcast for growth-focused leaders who are tired of scaling their businesses the hard way. Each week, you'll hear the real stories, the messy parts, the proven strategies that help leaders grow without burning out their team or themselves. And yes, you'll definitely hear a few spicy takes along the way. If you're building something that matters and you're ready for smarter systems, better people ops, and fewer fires to put out, you're in the right place. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen, follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram at Scale Without Chaos, and check out our newsletter for insights you won't find anywhere else. And now, this week's episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Scale Without Chaos. I am your host, Samantha Riel, and today I am joined by a very special guest. I'm so grateful that she joined me here today to talk about a topic that I think we might make a little spicy, but one that definitely needs to be talked about. Thank you, Freya.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
If you'd like to introduce yourself, and then we'll jump right into introducing our topic.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sam. So I am Freya Ward. I am the Global Growth Director at a B2B technology lead generation company called Headley Media. I have grown throughout my career in both marketing and sales roles. I actually started my career within an electronics media agency, which is potentially one of the most male-dominated environments as a young female to start finding their feet in the marketing world. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely taught me a few skills throughout life that hopefully we can bring into this podcast today.
Absolutely. Hi, I'm curious, how many times have you been the only female in the room?
Oh my goodness, that is a fantastic question. More times than I'd like to admit, I think.
I've completely and utterly lost count. So this will be a really good conversation. All right, so let's jump into it. So we are going to be talking about specifically women when we get into leadership roles, working our way into leadership roles. Why is it that we feel the need to maybe push a little bit harder than some of our male counterparts? Why is it that we have a really hard time saying no? Why are women burning out and leaving the workforce? And really, why are we kind of, I dare to say, overworked and underestimated? That would maybe a little bit. So Freya, you brought this conversation topic to me. Can you just go into a little bit about why you're so passionate about this? Of course I am too, but why are we so passionate about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually listened to your first podcast, the first one that you popped out a few weeks, month or so ago, maybe a little bit longer. And immediately I felt inspired. I thought you were talking about a really important topic. You were talking about scale without chaos. You were talking about that side of things within business. And for me, I thought, oh my goodness, we're going to hit it off. We've got very similar outlook on our experiences, and that there is actually sometimes I think people need to be reminded that there is opportunity for growth without the chaos piece. I reached out to you and I said to you, I'd actually recently done a talk or been part of co-hosting a talk around females standing out in male-dominated environments. And off the back of that, within the Q&A, we were asked by the community, it was on Exit 5, so it was inside of a closed community in a subdivision that was females only, so it was a really safe space. And off the back of that, during the Q&A...
Very cool.
Really, really cool. It's awesome. And it's awesome that actually a male-owned and led community identified that there is a need for a female safe space within it. And in that conversation, we talked about propping each other up publicly and privately. So when you see females that are maybe business matter experts or topic matter experts that and you see a post within the community, tag them, give them the foot up to express their opinion on that topic. If you see a female posting on LinkedIn, like it, engage with it, propping each other up. And during that, very much an open dialogue and open conversation. There was feedback that often as females in business, we start our career without boundaries. We do not set boundaries because we think there's a real importance, or there's a real, we're great at being fixers and problem solvers, and we don't necessarily raise our voice to say our opinion, we shouldn't do that because of X, Y, and Z, until we're in that position of power and leadership. So we're now doing or I should say the Exit 5 community. I'm not sponsored by them. I was kind of an unsolicited co-host in the first one, similar to this situation. And the actual community themselves have asked if we can provide spaces where we can talk about how to set boundaries early in your career to prevent this burnout. I also think that, there's so much to unpack here, right? And we're going to have to keep this a little bit concise. And I know you've got a structure to try and keep us on track, but I'm sure we're going to go off on tangents in the other direction. But one of the key...
We will.
One of the things I think is when you are in the early stages of your career and you're a female and you are tenacious and you're enthusiastic and all of these things, you try and find places that you can be helpful and useful. And in doing so, your workload gets more and more and more. People don't necessarily see that. It may not be the path that you were employed for, but you make yourself useful. And I think it's hard as you move into leadership roles to fight the urge to keep doing that. Delegating is really, really cool. We want to be seen as authoritative, but we don't want to be seen as aggressive. We want to be heard at the table, but we don't want to overspeak. We want to empower more junior people, but we end up taking them under our wing and maybe overcompensating on empowering them. And that in itself can be a really real drain on our resource. So I think I brought this topic to you, Samantha, because I think you're going to have a fantastic point of view on it. I think hopefully the listeners will resonate with a lot of what we're talking about today. And the more spaces and places that we can talk about this topic, the more we can empower the next generation and even our peers and ourselves. Actually, I learn a lot in these conversations to do little things each day that break the cycle.
Absolutely. Yes. When I first started out in my career, what resonated with me about what you just said was we start our careers without boundaries. That could not be more true. Absolutely could not be more true. I don't think, thinking of all the female professionals that I know, I think we would all resonate with that saying. And so thinking back to the start of my career, I started in 2008, so it was in the middle of the recession. Could not find a job. I had been a waitress, a server for quite some time, and I thought when I graduated college, I would have absolutely no problem finding a job. It took me over a year to find a part-time job in my chosen field, and it was as a freelancer to do the work. And I was ultimately hired as a full-time employee, but I hustled. I had to show that I was the best fit for that role. I made it. I got that role, but it was tough. And that didn't go away for a long time, a really long time. I actually, just real quick before I ask you the next question, I'll tell a story. I remember being at work on my maybe third or fourth wedding anniversary until 9 or 10 o'clock at night because we had a presentation the next day and I needed to be getting it done. And of course, in my mind, I was the only one that could do it and do it well. So it's amazing. And we're going to talk about it, the pressure that we put on ourselves and how hard it is to set those boundaries, especially early on.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's such a good example.
Yeah.
It's so hard to set them early on. It's also really hard to introduce them later in your career. And it's really, it goes against everything that is instilled in us. I think there's also one thing that is unspoken, or it may occasionally be spoken by people that don't necessarily know how hard we hustled to get to our positions, is that you're fortunate or you're lucky or you should be grateful or...
Right.
I'm not fortunate or lucky. I don't believe in luck. I'm fortunate for sure, but I'm not lucky. Luck didn't get me my position today. Hard work, hustle, definitely taking on a lot of different, spinning lots of wheels, wearing lots of hats, which I like doing. And I don't think in this we're recommending that people don't diversify their skill set and raise their hand at things that maybe feel a little bit out of their reach. But it is prioritization, it is
Right.
setting boundaries, it's knowing that actually you can delegate and it will be okay. Something I'm still struggling with, something I'm still learning to do. If you asked any of my colleagues, if you asked anybody in my team, they would probably say I'm not great at delegating, but it's something I'm learning and I'm trying. And you know what? Nothing's burst into flames anytime I've done it, so I should keep doing it.
Exactly. And I still think that this takes a little bit of time, but it took a long time for me to realize that burnout is not proof of commitment. It is absolutely not proof of commitment. And when I looked around and saw that I was hustling, I'm thinking about one particular role in my past, but I was hustling harder than anybody else. I was the one who was driving the presentations to Boston at 9 o'clock at night to meet the last plane going out because they needed to be overnighted somewhere. Like that was me that was doing that. No one else was doing that. Well, it's crazy when I think back on that it's just like I said, I just look back in awe at 25, 26-year-old me and said, girl, slow down. Like, what are you doing? Like, just chill out a little bit. But it was almost encouraged. It maybe not encouraged, but it was definitely rewarded. That behavior was rewarded by the senior leadership team. No one said to me, hey, Sam, maybe you should like tone it. Not tone it that way. They'd said, watch your tone, but not tone down like the amount of hustle. They loved it, right? That meant that they didn't need to do those types of things. So, it's just, and it was just continually trying to prove myself. And it was a really bad cycle. And I think it just kept repeating. And it wasn't just one job. It was all the jobs, right? All of my career choices. And so that's when I decided that it's not them, it's me. It's me that feels this way, but maybe it's implied. So where do you think, Freya, that we get into this cycle and how do we break it?
Excellent question. I know where I got into the cycle. I was a green marketer. I was enthusiastic. I was a marketing apprentice. So I was, the most junior amongst the team. And I was trying to find my feet and find my place and be helpful and useful. And I quickly recognized that there was reward around the term overachieving. I was branded an overachiever.
Uh-huh.
And that was positive.
Yes.
I received national awards for my overachievement. I received internal
Right.
acknowledgement and a round of applause for going over and above and overachieving. And at a really critical moment in my career when I was a sponge and I was absorbing everything and learning, business etiquette, how to work with seniors, how to communicate with senior professionals, how to win clients, how to do all of these important key things in business, I got my dopamine fix from being recognized as an overachiever. And that carried on throughout my entire career. That was, if I'm not overachieving, if I'm not stretching, if I'm not, I do also thrive under stress and pressure. I perform my best. I know I do. When I am at a deadline, all of those things, a hard client deadline, you will get the best work out of me in that last hour. So there's some skill in there as well.
Right.
I do perform best under pressure. But when your inbox becomes the pressure and when you're unable to actually perform at 100% because you're only loading yourself towards that deadline and towards that the bitter end of something, that's burnout. That's the edge of burnout. And that is not overachievement. That is exhaustion. How do you break that cycle? And what do you do? What are some key practical things that you can do to prevent that from happening? Know your worth, first of all. Know your value and your worth. If you're the only person that's heading over to Boston and on the last flight, or if you're the only person that ever raises their hand to stay late and finish a project, if you're the only person that clients call out of hours because you're the one that they know will pick up the phone, that's not necessarily perceived value. That is a lack of boundaries, a lack of expectation setting. And I think the way that you can start breaking it is by recognizing it when it starts to happen. It's way harder in my experience to break that later in life, because anything other than overachieving for me now doesn't feel like success and achievement. I have to really recognize it in the work I'm doing, and recognize when actually, if I'm pushing everything to the last minute, if I'm working at my best under stress, like I say, small tasks, inbox management, those kind of things shouldn't be done under stress and pressure, because it very quickly tips over into actually really poor work. And the sense of achievement is, and the dopamine hits and all of those things are much, much weaker. So practical examples of how you break that cycle, I think, is recognizing it early, making sure you're surrounding yourself by people that don't reward overachievement. Absolutely. If one member of my team goes above and beyond for a pitch, I'm going to recognize it and reward it. But if they're doing that all of the time, then we have a workload and resource issue. If they're online at 10 p.m. every single night, we have an issue. And it's my responsibility as a leader to cultivate an environment where, yeah, we do extra hours. You know, you're salaried. You're not expected to always finish at 5:30. What you put in, you get out. But I, as a leader, as a manager, should recognize when my team are not managing to manage their workload inside of their allocated hours. And it isn't a one-off, or because they're really passionate about a project, or, you know, it's because they're either not delegating, they've got too much work on. And so I think by surrounding yourself by people that have a similar mentality, even in interview, you know, if you ask questions in interview, how did the team achieve what they're achieving? What are the actual realistic working hours for this role? I don't think it would put me off as someone that was interviewing someone if they were asking about the reality of achievement. So set yourself up in an environment where overachieving, overworking isn't celebrated.
Precisely. It took me a long time to unlearn what success looked like. Exactly what you said. The overachieving mentality to me was success. When my team was overachieving, that was success. I would push them to do the best. My team had to be the best out of anyone in the entire company. I'm still that way, by the way. I'm competitive as well. But it had to be. Just whenever I go into an organization, the first thing that I would say to the teams is, we are building a world-class marketing team. Like, I don't care what size we are. For our size, we are going to be world-class. And so it took me a long time to realize that we didn't need to push that hard, and it ultimately made me a much better leader. And I don't know, Freya, how this, you talked a little bit about how this has impacted you with your teams, but I specifically remember once I learned this lesson of what success should look like, recognizing it in other people and in my direct reports to get them to slow down so that they had longevity with us as opposed to burning out very quickly. I had one woman on my team who, she was continually frustrated because we had another person on the team that had a special skill. They were a designer, but they never hit the deadline. And so my overachiever person was saying, can I learn Photoshop? Can you buy me Photoshop? Because I want to be able to hit my deadlines. And so I said, look, if you want to learn Photoshop for the purpose of expanding your skills, and you feel like that's something that will help you in your career, I absolutely will get you Photoshop. If you are getting Photoshop because you want to achieve here, we're not doing that. We're going to manage that a different way, which is communication and setting expectations and things like that. So it has made me recognize it in other people, especially women, not just women though, men too, but especially women, to say, look, you don't need to be that person. Everything is okay when you're not that person. So let's just take it down. That's my favorite. Take it down. Take a deep breath, and everything will be fine.
I think that's really, really important. And I think it's setting an example. Like, you're spot on there. It's setting an example. Because if your most senior person is someone that you look up to, that you aspire to maybe be in their position one day, or to, you know, we work for people at the end of the day, don't we? We work for culture, and we work for people, we work for individuals. And if there is respect there, that respect should be both ways. And if they are
Absolutely.
burning themselves out, and I mean, we all do it as managers. We have to do things that, you know, we might have to log on at 10 p.m. at night to check something because you suddenly remember that you've forgotten something. We're not saying don't do that. We're not trying to create a generation of going completely the other way, because businesses have to run, and you know, these are responsibilities we undertake as senior leadership. But because I'm doing it, it's
Right.
not monkey see, monkey do. Because I'm doing it, I don't expect you to do exactly the same thing. And you won't be punished by working your contracted hours. So long as your work is getting done, you know, if you've got too much work and you're needing to work the overtime all the time, either I need to recognize that in you, or if I don't have visibility into that, you need to raise your hand and say to me, hey, Freya, can we have a conversation about my workload? It works both ways, I think.
Mhm. So we've talked a lot about burnout. We talked about recognizing it. Why do you think women in particularly feel this pressure, this cycle? I would say more. The only reason that I would say more, and I'm sure that I will have some gentlemen come talk to me about this in the comments and things like that, but it's not really something that we hear about from the male culture. It's more the female culture of, this is how we feel. We felt like we needed to do this. And so why do we get that? Why do we feel that way? It's so weird. I mean, but it's there for most of us. So why?
I agree. I think you are. I would like to hear from males that potentially feel the same thing, because I do not think this is you
Yeah.
to a gender, but I do think that more often than not, it is women that come forward and say that this is a challenge. I think there's a few different factors at play. I think we feel that we have fought so hard to get into our position that we have to be perceived of value at all times, which means you can't drop the ball. Have to keep that. You have to keep
Yes.
spinning. You have to keep going by any means possible. I think there is also a timeline pressure on females. I don't have any children myself. I'd like to have children one day, but I don't have any. But I do think that there is a perception that when you hit a certain age, or you get married, or you, all of these things, that there's almost a time limit on your ability to be able to perform. This is, I believe, put on us by ourselves. We feel pressure in all kinds of different ways. We're females. I'm 32. I have a lot of personal pressure in my head, because I'd like to have children one day, because I'd like to start a family, but I don't want to do it right now. I'm also really passionate about my career. So for me, I think when I was younger, I was striving to get to the most senior, the most advanced, the most experienced, not necessarily the most senior, but the earning that respect, that I almost wanted to cap it. I was thought, right, when I hit 30, I might not be as desirable if I haven't achieved this, and this, professionally speaking. And I think we put a lot of that pressure on ourselves, to be perceived as valuable. I think there is still an unspoken significant difference between males and females in the workplace. And I'm not here to bro bash or anything like that. But we,
No.
that's not the intention of this conversation by any means. I'm here to uplift, to educate, to empower both females and males in the workspace. But I think as females, we do put an awful lot of pressure on ourselves. I think something that was really interesting that's come out of this similar conversation I was having in another space, was that often, if there are two females in the workplace in similar levels of seniority, it's a fight to the top. It can be perceived as competition. Why, Samantha, do you think that if there are two females in the workspace and there's one senior role going, why is there, or even if there isn't one senior role going, why is there potentially competition between those two females in a way that there wouldn't be between a male and a female?
And it's so sad that it is that way, but I recognize it. I've been there before as well. And back to the beginning of our conversation, how many times have you been the only female in the room?
Yeah.
Freya? I mean, I can't even count how many times I've been the only female in the room. And I just sit there, in fact, to the point where I don't even recognize it anymore. I'm just in there and then I'm like, oh, hey, I'm the only female in here. So I think that women, it is never said, but I think that women just have in the back of our mind, maybe that there's only so many spots. There's only so many spots. There's only so many roles where women are dominating that particular field. So marketing, of course, marketing is one of them where women are primarily in leadership roles there. Customer success, sometimes when you look at CEOs, there's a higher percentage of males than females. When you look at CFOs, I don't even know what the percentage of male to female is, but it is certainly a lot higher when it comes to males versus females. And the same thing with COOs. So when you start looking at those upper level positions, it's very clear to say, I'm not saying, again, gender outside of gender. So we're just talking about women and the perception that women have. It's very easy to see, hey, my leadership team only has one woman in it, so they feel like they need to fight for that one role. That's what I would say is the biggest reason that those happen. And it is so sad. It should be there's room for everybody. There's room for everybody at the top. And we can all work to get there. And it's based off of any type of, it's based off of your attributes and what you bring to the table versus anything else. But we're still in this generational kind of trap, millennials, still kind of in this generational trap where we saw that our moms maybe didn't get that opportunity. And so we're really the first generation to really be pushing into that senior leadership team, and we're pushing hard. And so I think we just feel like we have to continue to push all the time. It's unspoken, totally unconscious thought, but it's that inherent applied. We're seeing what's happening. And so that's why we feel like we need to do what we're doing.
Yeah. I couldn't articulate it better myself. I think it is that you see what's immediately in front of you. And something I think that's really, really important is, and there was an example in one of the community conversations I was having, the male-dominated, female standing out in male-dominated environment. It was like a live stream. So It was a real Q&A. People were jumping in, sharing stories. It was lovely. It was like therapy, like group therapy. And it was excellent. And somebody shared a story. I won't obviously disclose much of the information about it, but somebody shared a story where they flipped it on its head. There were two people, two females. They were both going for the same role, working within the same team, and they actually propped each other up. They lent on each other's skill set. They earned the role out of their own merit, and actually the business recognized that and created two roles. Amazing. If only all business,
those are great,
would do.
Yes.
But to your point, Sam, I think I agree with you. You asked me the question at the beginning of this call, how many times have you been the only female in the room? And I said, oh my goodness, that is more times than I would like to admit. The honest answer of that is I don't know, because in the most recent years, maybe the last 5 years of my career, I don't recognize myself as a female in the room. I recognize myself as a global growth director, or as a strategist, or as a thought leader, or as whoever I am in that situation, depending on the topic at hand. And I no longer feel fortunate that I was not seen as a female to get my role. I no longer feel that way because it's on my own merit. It's hard work, it's dedication. And whether you are male, female, it shouldn't matter. If you are good at your job, you are dedicated, you are loyal, all of those things. And if you're not burnt out, you're not so burnt out that you can't actually perform your role, then I think you have to remember you just deserve a seat at the table. But unfortunately, I do think that there are still a lot of businesses that do see gender often as well. I haven't worked in one of those businesses for a very long time, but I do think that there are still a lot of them out there. And I think one of the key things I would say to the audience is, if you recognize yourself potentially in one of those situations, or if you want to feel the empowerment of having females around you, but maybe it isn't relevant in your immediate circle. There are heaps of communities out there. There are heaps of women that would love to either mentor you or guide you or share thoughts or do co-therapy. These kind of sessions, we're all here. Find yourself a mentor, find yourself an ally. They could be from a completely different sector. Look on LinkedIn. Who is actively posting and talking about this topic and this subject? If they're not able to support you directly, I'm sure they'll be able to refer you to a Slack channel, a face-to-face networking group. There are heaps of communities out there. And for me, the real shift came when I started finding mentorship, unintentional mentorship. It was just super strong, super professional, incredible women in their field that became my allies, and they started to empower my enthusiasm rather than try and suppress my enthusiasm. They gave me a safe space to ask stupid questions that weren't stupid questions, and they made them not stupid. And just in doing that, it allowed me to start to recognize secret skills that I actually think us females possess. Intuition, relationship recognition, nuance recognition in conversation. If you've ever spoken to a saleswoman who will actually tell you her trade secrets, a lot of those are being able to understand body language in a way that potentially others in the room don't. Being able to fill in the gaps between what is being said. Being able to sense the sentiment behind something. The emotional intelligence of the unspoken factors that I actually believe us as females, they're super skills.
Agree. And for the communities and folks that are talking about it on LinkedIn, I know that there are lots of them, but I will give a secret to my favorite, Victoria Dyke, who I believe we're both connected with, Freya. She is the co-founder of Ziggy. And I've known her for, I don't even know how long now, but she does an amazing job coming up with content. All of her content that she's sharing is about the fact that she is running an agency, her husband is staying home with their children, and what that all looks like as a working mom, and how to manage all of those different gender norms, gender roles. And so she is also a great resource because she has she's connected me with other women, both in the United States, in the UK, all over the world. She's fantastic. She's a great networker. So if there's anyone here listening, I would definitely plug Vix. If she goes by Vix, I would plug Vix and just say that she's fantastic and does a lot of work here too. So she's great. And of course, Exit 5. We can't go through the rest of this episode without mentioning that Exit 5 and Dave. I mean, it's whenever you have a marketing community, you can't get through a conversation without mentioning Exit 5 and Dave Gerhardt. But so that's another one as well. But you're right, there are several out there that offer this kind of support. And I think mentorship is the key, because I think obviously we try to emulate good behavior that we see, and where there are fewer women in leadership roles, it is important to seek them out and to figure out what is your type of leadership style, what is your type of commitment style. You're not burning out, but what are you looking for? What is a good thing? And I love the comment that you made too, Freya, about asking stupid questions that aren't really stupid questions, but are very relevant to women and women who are learning. I think that was excellent. So it's a good reminder too, that that's a safe space that you can do that with as well with a mentor. Any final thoughts, Freya, before we wrap up? This has been an amazing conversation.
I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me. I guess final thoughts are, in any place in business, whatever stage of your career that you are in, stick to true to who you are as an individual. Be realistic about setting boundaries. Be unrealistic about your goals, because the world is your oyster, but have those micro goals that still give you that sense of achievement, even if you're not overachieving. By setting those boundaries, you set yourself up for a successful career. And the key thing that I think we need to all be conscious of doing more of, I mentioned it earlier, is if you see a topic matter expert, if you see a post on LinkedIn and you know a topic matter expert, tag them in it. If they're a female, even better, tag them in it. Give them the step up and the encouragement. Engage with their content. if you're in a networking situation and you think, this is a really interesting conversation, but I know someone who has a better point of view or a stronger point of view or more experience in this, link them up, sync them up. I think you can do this at any stage in your career. And what it actually does is it helps build community, which is one thing that I think everybody is struggling with post-pandemic, remote working, all of these different things. And my heart goes out to those that are starting out in their career, because that in-person relationship that you build with a network, whether they are going to be of value to you right now, in the future, or if it's just personal value, it's lost at the moment. And we all need to consciously do more. When it comes to burnout and things like that, just be patient with yourself. What you said at the beginning of this conversation, burnout isn't a metric of success. And I think we all have to be more mindful of that.
And truly, you don't need to break to belong in a leadership team. I think for women who are striving, really pushing to accelerate in their career, you don't have to leave your job. Sometimes the environment change is healthy, but you don't have to leave your job. Just take a second and look at, what is the level of effort that I'm putting in here? Is it sustainable? Is it something that I can maintain a year or 2 years or 3 years down the road? Or is this something where I'm going to be a shell of myself in 6 months? And just say, what would happen if I brought that down even 10%? Would I still be pushing harder than everyone else and maybe be a little bit more whole as a person? So just please think through that. For anyone who's listening that's really pushing to accelerate in their career, please just have that internal conversation with yourself before you burn out. Don't wait. We all know our signs of burnout. Don't wait until it's too late. Take the time to slow down and maybe bring it back to 100. We don't need to be pushing at 120%.
Excellent.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Freya. Again, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you bringing this topic to me. It's always one that I love to discuss, and I just think it's so needed. The community is needed, the conversation is needed, and I appreciate you continuing to further it and to push it. So again, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Excellent. All right. This has been Scale Without Chaos. We will see you next week. Thank you for listening to Scale Without Chaos. If you got value from today's episode, do me a favor. Hit that follow button, share the episode with someone scaling a business, or leave a review. It helps more than you know. You can find more content, free resources, and behind-the-scenes takes on LinkedIn and Instagram at Scale Without Chaos. And if you want weekly insights straight to your inbox, head over to balsamandcedar.com and sign up for the newsletter. Keep building. We'll see you next week.